What up, folks? I can't do it long distance. What people don't know, now it's working because there's people watching.
Yeah.
We did this already, and it didn't work. So I did my amazing what up, folks. It was very long and energetic because I'm fucking excited. And we can drop the F-bomb on this. It's okay. Also, welcome to the Mikey G podcast experience. How you feeling, brother?
Dude, it is an absolute honor to be featured on the Mikey G podcast. And for many don't even know this, but we have been talking about this for such a long time now. And just the fact that it's happening today, it's a huge check mark, man. And the fact it's already 2025, a new year. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Very excited to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, man. What we were talking about before is there's just something that feels special about this year. And it's so here's something that's interesting. And we'll talk about all this. One, I love brand. You love brand. I have a very traditional brand background, but you have a really interesting brand background as you built this real time in Web3. One thing that I think is cool about what I've built in particular is I'm still able to get people like BAWSA and all of these people based off the brand of like integrity and deep, genuine conversation. And it's me, right? Like I'm not represented by any marketing agency. Like I've
Right.
kind of built that from the ground up. And I really think that I feel like this year things are happening. How do you feel about your 2025? Are you as excited as I am? Like, do you get a feeling like this year's maybe a little bit more special?
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring this up because I think this is also just how like human psychology, whenever there's a brand new year, we tend to want to refine things, you want to approach things differently, and that has kind of just been my thing, but more on like I just want to just allow the process to process, right? Like let the river flow wherever it takes me.
Yeah.
But absolutely, man, like there's just something different, and I don't know if it's like the timing of the markets where you're experiencing such a euphoric take on the timeline where people are excited about NFTs
Oh,
again. The markets are looking good. Bitcoin new all-time high, right? So it's a
yeah.
combination of many things. So I think it's like a plethora of just so many good things happening. And so yeah, that's why I'm also really excited to be here today. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the coolest thing too is and we'll talk about this later, is I felt this when I first entered in 2021, 2020,
Mm,
2021.
mhm,
Now I've put in the work and I can experience this next one,
mm,
knowledge, right? Which
mm,
is
mm,
huge, and we will talk
mm.
about that. But
Yeah.
enough of like us already getting excited talking about content creation. This experience is about you. I deeply, deeply care about you as a human being. We're going to go down a really magical journey, like I said, around a digital campfire, whether it's beer, whether it's you like to smoke a joint or drink water. I'm at the water stage of my life. I did a while ago. So we're just going to have a good time. But to do that, we always have to start with who you are as a human. I like to
Mm,
do a formal introduction, and then we're going to start peeling back the layers of the onion. So the formal introduction is, for most of you that know, most of you do know BAWSA, but for the ones that you don't know, he loves sharing insights with founders on upcoming NFT projects. He is really, really into building brands in the Web3 space, thinks it's critically important, and tweets a lot about helping out small time creators, which I love to do too, because you always hear the same things, but I think there's a click down that not a lot of people do, and BAWSA does that. Before Web3, BAWSA was extremely heavy into the music industry and DJing, producing, recording engineer. I think you've talked about that to some of your audience, but not everybody knows that.
yeah.
Um, and really, his main goal, which I love, he has a goal and a mission like myself, is to create the next generation of content creation for people of all ages and help them do that. Pioneer all of the new people coming into the space. And we're about to hit a new wave of that. But the most exciting part is I have alpha on BAWSA's background that nobody. And this man used to cut hair. Not only did he cut hair, he did it for a couple years. How did I do on the introduction, my man? Anything you want to add?
Dude, I think you hit almost every single corner. It was almost like I was having like a nostalgic walkthrough of like my life and my childhood. So hit
Perfect.
every angle. Yeah, man, I love it.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're even gonna do just wait. This is just the beginning. So with that being said, we're at the world famous midlife crisis question, which is BAWSA, how did you get the seat you're sitting in today? Please give me episode 1, 2, and 3. To reiterate for the audience that has never seen Mikey G podcast format style, episode 1 is I'm deeply interested in BAWSA's upbringing. Now, we don't have to get deep and intimate personal. You can if you want. People have.
Yeah.
But in this particular phase, interested in, were you a tinkerer? What were you into? Do you have any vivid childhood memories that kind of started shaping the mindset that you have today? Episode 2, high school, schooling, if you went to schooling. I think we talked about you didn't have a corporate job. So what happened in that middle section? Then
Yeah.
before episode 3, you get to Web3. You find Web3. You're currently doing what you're doing in Web3. And then what does the future look like to you 3, 6, 12 months and beyond? Brother, I cannot wait. Hit me.
Yeah, I love this. I love this, man. I love the way you're formatting everything and structuring this conversation. Man, you know what really comes to mind first is like, I guess I should just provide context, right? Is like, so both my parents are Filipino. They're born and raised from the Philippines. Um, my dad moved out here when I believe he was like 15 or 14, if I'm not mistaken, and I think my mom was a little bit later, or actually around the same age. But you know, them coming here, and I also can't forget about my grandpa as well. He's the one that really made a huge move for the family to move here from the Philippines to the States. But the reason why I bring that up is because amongst at least my dad's side, there's a total of I believe 5 siblings or 6 siblings. I forget. I get always stuck between those two numbers, but I'm the youngest grandkid as far as like
Mm,
from my generation.
right.
So and I have an older sister. She's about like 6, 7 years older than me. But when I was, fresh out the womb, right?
Yeah.
All of my sister, she was already like 5 or 6 years old. All of my older cousins, they were probably around like 8 or 9 already as well. So I myself, I was kind of like that last tail end of like the generation of like whatever BAWSAs, right? And just to also give more context, I don't know if people know this, but the name BAWSA is actually my last name. My first name is actually Jeffrey, and but what's different about my last name, at least here in my username, at least, is I added the W there, because people without it, it's actually originally spelled BASA. But whenever I was at school, elementary school specifically, people would always pronounce my name as Basa, Basa.
Mhm.
Some people would even pronounce it correctly, like Basa. And so, growing up, I'll get to it later, but that's why I added the W's to help pronounce it. But that's like kind of like where this all started, where me being the youngest grandkid of my generation, and just being raised again in that household where you almost feel like you're like the last one invited to things, or like you're like the last option to be like, oh hey, like since you're the youngest, oh sorry, you can't come out with us, or you can't go out with everyone else, but that was just something that I just naturally became natural to, but where this has kind of led me to the seat I am today is like this kind of instilled with me this drive in a sense to
Mm,
just want to go out there and do cool things, right? When I was 9 years old, I picked up the piano, and I remember that was when I also first discovered YouTube. And I was so fascinated by like,
yeah.
whoa, like people are just recording themselves playing the piano or just doing something fun and unique, and you can post this on the social platform, and you get views for it. And like I thought that was so cool. And I remember back then I used to own like this very like extremely cheap Acer laptop, and it had one of the worst front cameras ever. It was so pixelated, but but I remember, and this is like so deep stuff too. My first ever YouTube channel is called The Optimist JB because I was a huge Transformers fan. I love
Man.
Transformers, and Optimus Prime was like the goat to me. So I was like, you know what? Like I'm gonna name my YouTube channel The Optimist JB, and obviously JB are my initials.
Right.
And my first ever YouTube video uploaded was like me playing the piano, and more specifically, it would be like these popular like radio hits
Right.
that you would tune into every now and then, and I would learn those songs on the piano,
Yeah.
record myself playing it, and then upload it. And I remember one day I came back home from school, and this I was like only in like third or fourth grade. I remember going back to my YouTube channel one day and seeing that one of my piano covers hit like 600, 800 views. And I was like, this is insane. Like, especially like, I don't know how old I was when you're in third or fourth
Yeah.
grade, but like you're probably like, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old.
Right.
And seeing 600, 800 views for a 9-year-old, 10-year-old channel, just someone playing piano, I'm like, I'm hyped. I'm like, yo, like this is cool. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just like to play the piano and just post covers, you know? So around that age was when I finally started to see a glimpse of like, what is social media? What is this tool? What is this new thing that's emerging in this world that people are starting to get familiar with?
Right.
And then fast forward to middle school was when I started taking up DJing, right? And
Mm.
this was during the times, I don't know if,
Quick.
yeah.
You already gave me enough information to talk about. And you're already in middle school. You're hyped up. I love this. I want to get into the DJing thing, but you said so many interesting things.
Yeah.
Your upbringing. So one, I get the hard work thing. It always makes sense of being like the last youngest grandson there.
Yeah.
I'm interested though, because I feel like a person like yourself that's so ambitious and it's just willing. You know, one of the things that I get from your content is you're just willing to try new things, which is really cool. And I think
Mhm.
that's a huge key. But I also feel like you're a compassionate human being and you deeply care about people too. Tell me about some of those other values that were instilled, whether it be family or some other experiences you went through.
Yeah. And honestly, like honestly owe it to the way that I was raised from both of my mom and dad. But more specifically, I think more of my mom, because man, my mom is like one of the most caring, heartwarming people that I know on this earth.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for the way that she has kind of shown me like how you should treat other people,
Yeah.
regardless of their background, regardless of like where they come from, you know? And so that is very, very heavily built within like my core values.
Mhm.
And that's just something that I try to show a lot in this space, right? Is especially here in crypto, man. We operate in a very anonymous, you know, not a lot of people are doxxed and not a lot of people are willing to dox, and that's completely fine, right? But it's this human interaction, whether that's, you know, us commenting on each other's posts, or kind of an example right now, we're on a live podcast together, right?
Yeah.
Like this human interaction, this conversation, it really speaks volumes about someone's character or just the way that they carry themselves, you
Right.
know? So I've always just tried, and this is something that I'm always working on every single day, is just trying to be the best version that I can be.
Yeah.
But not just for myself, but to also show other people that, you know, watch me or that interact with me or even just talk to me on a day-to-day basis that,
Mhm.
hey, like, you know, we share similar problems, we share this, and we're all just humans at the end of the day. And that's why compassion and just showing empathy or just love, positivity with those around us is the greatest thing we can do sometimes,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And
So, yeah.
so love that you bring that up because I think it's just an important message to hear because this comes up all the time on this podcast is now some people don't have the perfect life, right? And it can't be their mom and dad for many different reasons, plethora of
Mhm.
reasons. But I think the thing that you said is critically important is you have to find somebody that one teaches you that being a good person is the right thing to do. But then feeling the sense of support and love is so critical to build that compassion and empathetic side. So it's
Facts.
amazing to hear you uh, get that input from your mother. And I did the same thing. My mom was so cool. We were the house that all the kids came to because we were
Yeah.
playing and we were singing in the living room. And she was taking everybody to the park. And that has stuck with me my entire life. Hence why I've built an entire brand off of that, just pure, genuine connection because
I
it's
love
very
that.
I think it's the only way, and I love your take on this in Web3. How do you cut through the bullshit? Like, this is my defense to it, you know, because and I'm really interested in your insight compared to what I did is when I first got in, I saw how bad it can get. And, you know, for everybody that's making a bag, there's a lot of poor people that lost money they don't have, right?
Facts.
No one really talks about that. And so I was getting the hundreds of DMs saying like, "Dude, I'll give you $1,000 to do a post," and I never did it. And I didn't do it because integrity and brand is of utmost importance to me. So my way to combat it was, okay, I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to bring the founders on. And then this is my form of doing research for the audience. And then you can make your own decision. I'm never going to write a thread. I'm going to write a thread about what I learned from them,
I
but
love
I'm not
this.
going to tell you why you should buy this. That was how I combated it with my brand and my compassion.
Yeah.
How you deal with that, because it's a really hard thing to deal with as a content creator on where you balance you're going to get income from who you're going to deal with. I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, this is actually a great question. And even as of right now, I think a lot of people in a sense kind of are figuring this out, especially if you're new to this creator economy, which is like also a random fact. I read somewhere that the creator economy, like if we had put a market cap on this, it's probably only around like 1 billion or like between 1 to 10 billion, but it's estimated to grow within like the next 4 years to reach like a 50 billion global economy, right? So there is still so much room left for newer creators to make a mark for themselves.
Right.
But I understand too, right? Like a lot of people do this content stuff to make an income, right? And you haven't really seen this as coined as a traditional job, right? Like I even till this day, whenever I tell people what I do, like whenever I tell people like, oh, yeah, I'm a full-time content creator, I almost get like raised eyebrows a little bit because it's not that they're against it, but it's more so the fact like, oh, I've never heard of what is a full-time content creator like, you know? So for once people imagine like, oh wow, like people or guys like myself and you are making a living off of content, like that's cool, right? And so this balance though of like trying to filter out, which deals do I take, which ones are worth it, which ones are not, I think you really just have to choose the ones that really align with your core values and the brand that you're trying to embody, right? So for an example with me, you mentioned it already that one of my missions is just to pioneer and really shape the next generation of content creators. Now, if I were to be approached by, let's say, a content platform that does allow this, right, and there is, let's say, a financial incentive on top, right, there is already alignment prior to that, interaction between myself and that brand happening. Now, let's say like something completely out of the blue that is so irrelevant to my brand comes to me and is like, hey, we'll pay you $10,000 to do this, to do that, right? Like, yes, well, the money may look nice, but you have to look at what is the brand of this, what is the core values of this team, what are they trying to push, right? So I think you really just have to put on that lens of alignment and really trying to see, does this fit within my niche or does it not, right? And
Right.
that's why I think staying true, I think that's something you mentioned to yourself, to the intro of this space or the stream, is like staying true to yourself is like probably one of the most key things in general when building a personal brand. Is like, how original can you stay and how true can you be, right?
Yeah.
There's so many things going on in this space, but yeah, that's pretty much the short end of it.
Love the insight, my man. Love the insight. And one more question about the childhood, and then we can get on to the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stuff. The other thing that you mentioned, and this question always fascinates me. I ask this often. You were talking about how you were just started to make videos and play music. You saw the piano, you were interested in it.
Yeah.
How much of that comes from that just like determination, like you talked about, of being the youngest grandson to be included in things? Or how much do you think of it comes from just some type of internal natural intuition? Like I'm always interested
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the learned versus inherent abilities.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's more of the latter. I think it's that second one you mentioned because even till this day, like music just resonates with me on a
Mhm.
different level. And I actually believe in this concept that there's actually like wavelengths in life and there's certain frequencies in life that there's frequencies that are bad for you and then there's frequencies that are good for you, and depending on your mood, depending on how you carry yourself, you adopt one of these frequencies throughout the rest of your life, right? And so I picking up the piano at that age not only was it like a form of entertainment for maybe your day-to-day viewer, someone that's on YouTube just wanting to watch entertainment, but this
Right.
was also a way like expressing who I was. Even then to who I am now is like I'm just a fan of music, and I express that by learning instruments like the piano, right? And I mentioned DJing, and I'll get into that, but it's like that alone has kind of shaped my perspective on how you can combine your passions, your talents into this digital economy and turn this into what people would consider as entertainment, right?
Right.
Free content that is digestible, something that's more appealing to your average day-to-day user, you know?
Right.
So yeah, that's what's kind of helped me.
Yeah. So I 100% agree with you, and this is gonna make a great short form clip. Cut what you just said and what I'm about to say. And I think the number one asset that you can acquire is passion about something.
Mhm.
But to do that, you got to just continue to try, right? Like, I didn't know I
Real.
would be deeply in love with podcasting, and I
Yeah.
knew I loved people. I knew I like to talk, uh,
Right.
but here's where the special craziness comes in is when you have an inherent natural ability. For me, my superpower is connecting with people because I just love people. But then I love to podcast. And now you combine these two efforts and it creates something very, very special. And that's what you're getting. That's the crux of what you're getting
Mm,
at.
mm.
And I think that message is very powerful. And you don't I just hate the excuse, "Well, I'm not passionate about anything," because 1, you can find that, and then 2, when you do find your superpower, I'd love your thoughts on this if you agree.
Yeah.
For instance, Web3. We always get this, you probably get this too. "Well, I'm not good at anything in Web3." And I'm like, "Well, that's bullshit." Because there's finance people, there's community people, there's designers, there's developers, like, you have every skill set in the world that exists in the Web3 vertical. I
Mhm.
think your challenge is finding your passion, finding your superpower, and aligning that to a specific segment within the Web3 vertical or any vertical that you're interested in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, before I answer that, right? Like one of my favorite quotes ever, and this is from Pharrell Williams, one of the best like producers ever that this world has ever seen. In a video that I watched one time, he mentioned that, when it comes to finding your passion, it has to be something that even if you weren't paid to do it, you
Yeah,
would still show up and do it,
yeah.
right? Like, and I think that's a great way to start and a great place to start for people that are trying to figure this out is
Mhm.
like you got to take out the money out of the equation,
Yep,
right? Because I feel that pursuing your passions will eventually help you discover how you can monetize that,
for
you
sure.
know? So to then now answer that question, I think it's exactly how you described it, right? There's this discovery path that I feel now that I'm thinking about it that most individuals need to go through, especially if you're just now getting into Web3, is like you can't just immediately categorize yourself as a dev or as a founder without any prior experience of delving into what that actually entails, because who knows, maybe along that path of that journey, you're going to figure out like, hey, you know what, instead of actually being a dev, I actually like doing podcasting, or like, hey, you know what, instead of podcasting, I actually like doing this stuff as well, you know so I
Yeah,
like how you said it too, right? It's this combination of this superpower and this passion that kind of morphs into one, right? But I think where a lot of people struggle, and let's see your thoughts on this, Mikey, is like I think a lot of people just struggle on how can they convey this as something valuable to other people, right?
right,
Because you hear so many stories of like, and I use this example all the time, like wood workshop. Like it's something that is so niche, right? But
right.
there is an audience for that. But it's
Yes,
about how can you get other people that are not into this to be interested in it, so it's this problem solving mindset that you have to adopt of like, okay, I found my superpower, I found my passion, but
mhm.
how can I market this or communicate it in a way where it's perceived as valuable to other people,
Oh
you
my god,
know
man. It's such a difficult nut to crack, and
yeah.
I've been at it for years, right? So, I'll tell you what's worked for me. What's worked for me is my brand going directly to founders, and
Mm,
founders absolutely appreciate what I do, this experience. You can see we're already
Mhm,
peeling back the
mhm.
layers of onion. I feel you sinking into that seat. Like we're about to we're getting down, right? Into really intimate conversation that you don't get really anywhere else in Web3. And
Right.
so they love that. But here's my problem, and it's the most frustrating thing, right? Is I'm not a cabal person. I'm not gonna do things for money. And listen, man, I'm in my 40s. I have no time for sitting in chats with like quote unquote alpha creators saying wag me all day and just like chatting to chat to get visibility. I don't have time for that. Right. So that my brand suffers from that because that's part of playing the game.
Mm,
Um, and so I had this amazing product market fit with founders, but it's not so great product market fit for Web3 as a whole, because even
mm,
within this niche, let's think what the 90% of the content sucks up. How to make money, what's hyped, what's the alpha, right? Like
mhm,
that's all
mhm.
people really care about. Now, even though the narrative is out there as like, oh, it's all about community and I care about people, at the end of the day, it boils down to money.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the biggest way I've been able to monetize is in the bulls, right? Because
Mm,
I have direct access to founders and um, I'm able to supply pre-sale spots. I'm actually able to get monetary value because of the experience and the content that I've gained create.
right.
But here's my big mistake. And what I'm getting at is these are all nuances and there's no right or wrong answer. Like you have to go through this journey and figure it. So simple things like in the last 6 months, I created a website. Who would have thought, right?
Mm,
Just
mm.
a simple website with social proof. I get quotes like amazing people from yourself that say, hey, the Mikey G experience was incredible. Here's this insane list of guests that's been on his show. Here's social proof from the community that likes what I do. And here's my podcast. And then here's the biggest mistake. I tried to double down on the YouTube podcast format because I thought it
Mm,
was going to be new and shiny. But I'm a podcast. I need to be on Spotify.
mhm,
I need to
mhm.
be on Apple, Podcasts, right? Like, I've only even done Spotify, and I've just, like, really committed to this over the last 3 to 4 months, and the traffic to my podcast site is insane. And, like,
Mm,
that's where I should have been, right? But my mistake is I love Web3 so much, I just wanna be a part of the community. So you really have to understand where your output and your content should be living. And so, but there's other things that I can do to still stay relevant in Web3, especially in the bull. I'm doing
yeah.
it right now. I know abstract's gonna be big. I know monad's gonna be big. I know Barachain's gonna be big. So I'm reaching out to the founders of projects that I think align with my values, and I'm gonna bring them on the show, and that inherently gets me exposure. But the other thing that you have to be, and this is, I think, one of the hardest things I deal with on a daily basis. I see people with these huge followings getting attention.
Mhm.
And I'm very confident I can do a better job when it comes to podcasting and interviews. And it's very frustrating to me. But I know that I have monetized the business and I only have 12,000 followers. So
Mm,
it's this kind of little ego clout play thing. But at the end of the day, I always take a step back and I'm like, well, you're accomplishing your goal by monetizing your content and doing what you love. And the answer is always yes. So I
yeah.
just keep on doing that and trying to find these little tweaks to make my content better and grow my business. And the last thing I'll say, I know this is pretty long-winded.
I love
Um,
it.
the last thing I'll say is to what you said in the first part, connections. Connections are absolutely key. And so the best thing that's happened to me in the last 4 to 5 months, this guy Bubble, I met him through DSK DAO, Tyler Blue. I'm sure you've seen him float around. And he is an amazing strategic project marketer mind.
Mm,
And so now I've actually added an extra service to my experience, which is, hey, give me a half hour. We're going to follow up, talk about the content that you loved. And this is the most powerful question that anybody can ask. What problems do you have so I can figure out how I might be able to help you solve them?
mm, mm,
And that's all I ask
mm.
in my post follow up question. That is turned into monetization as well. So, long answer short, there's no quick answer. There's no easy way. You have to figure out, I think it's nuances, right? It's
Yeah, yeah.
nuances, and something as little as a website or putting your content on the appropriate platform will completely change the game overnight.
Yeah. But I really, really love your concept with like providing that value to founders. And this is something that I realized in Web3. It's all about social proof, right? It's
Yes.
about like showing people what you do before you even consider to monetize such said product or such said incentive, you
Mhm.
know? So the fact that you are getting, I remember seeing JR on your podcast
Yeah.
the other month, right? And then I know you're gonna have Bosu Kev here on I believe in a couple of days, right? Like
Yeah.
this is the type of stuff where people want to see from the Mikey G show is like, oh wow, like this guy is reeling in the big founders, like the guys that are considered upper echelon in this space,
Yeah.
and that's massive for your brand, you
Yeah.
know. So that's social proof plus this combination of how you're able to conduct a healthy conversation, a very deep dive inside of a conversation. Like this is the type of experiences that people will remember. And it's not something that people can put a price tag on because
Yeah.
this is something embedded on literally this is recorded, this is live. People can listen back to this,
Mhm.
So there's so much value already in this podcast alone. This is why I think, the way that you're pioneering this and just shaping and even giving access to founders to come onto your show, talk about their experience, talk about their products, what they're building. This is something that Web3 needs,
Yeah.
So
100%.
exactly, man. I love it. I love it.
And you're doing it in your own way, and we'll get there, and I can't wait. And I'll say the last thing, and you have this too, and this is what creators need, and it takes a listen. I tweeted about this last week. I'd actually love your take on this. I it's like not light years, but there is a big delta in what founders say the number one thing helped them succeed. And this very simple tip is you have to work hard consistently over a long period of time. And when I
Mm-hmm.
say long period, minimum 5 years.
Mm,
You're
mm,
looking at a decade here, people. And just even looking back at I would say the last 2.5, 3 years, I've really been doubling down. I feel like I'm still just getting started. What are your thoughts about that whole concept?
yeah, dude. I mean, consistency alone is like and the most important ingredient just to reaching like mastery. Not even I won't even coin it as success because there's many ways that people define success differently.
For
But
sure.
like to achieve mastery of
Yeah.
a craft or of something that you're skilled of,
Yeah.
it requires consistency. I mean, take a look at some of the greats, even outside of Web3. Like, let's talk about LeBron James. This man is 40 something years old, 20 years in the NBA league, and he is still making insane new stats, career all-time high stats.
Wild.
And if that doesn't speak mastery, right? Like that is so true. So I'm 100% on the same sentiment. And what's fascinating though, right, is like now that I'm thinking, and now that you brought up like this 5-year minimum, I'm just now embarking on my 4th year of like going full-time crypto,
Yeah.
and it gets me really and maybe this is what this feeling we're describing in the very early of this podcast is like why do we feel like this year is so different. It's
Right.
because this 5-year mark is coming up,
Mhm.
and there's so much. Even the moment I hit that 5-year mark, there's still so much more to
Ah,
improve on and go after. But it's this idea of knowing that there's so much to achieve this year, there's so much to learn from this upcoming year alone, and it's just that matter of commitment, right?
yeah.
Before consistency, there must be commitment. And
Mhm.
and without commitment, without discipline, you're never going to be consistent, you know? So that is also something that I've learned as running like brick by brick, like a business or running my own personal brand is like
Mm.
my outcome is only my outcome is reliant on myself. How much do I want to commit to this on a day-to-day basis,
Yep.
right? So that is another fruitful reminder that you are only as good as much as you put in,
Yeah.
So I love that. Yeah.
So to follow up on that, because I people deal with it many ways, and I feel like my strategy changes over time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
man, it's human nature. Even me, when you see me, I'm jacked up 100% of the time. Just fucking love life, right? That's Mikey G. Mikey G loves life and he's jacked up. But guess what, people? I wake up in the morning and say, fuck all of this. I don't want to do it too. Right? I have this, I don't wanna do it. And the strategies to get through that. Now, we've already talked about the main one that I think is the biggest key, which is finding your superpower and passion and combining them. Taking that aside, I'm talking about like tangible tactics. What works
Mm,
for you?
mm. You know, this is where things get a little bit, I wouldn't say tricky. It's only just because that, I'm a person sometimes that relies on no, like, for example, people talk about Notion all the time. Like, oh yeah, use Notion to help organize and schedule all these things. Dude, to tell you the truth, I'm on Google Calendar just using like the default template and just inputting like dates and like inputting things like here. Cause like for me, like I just like to keep things simple, right? And that's why like my take on this is actually more on a mental thing more than it is about like something tangible. Because for me, it's like I like to operate on a deadline basis, right? Like I'm very goal oriented. If I have something in my mind that I want to achieve by the end of today, I'm going to knock it out, right? Now, that is something that stays in my mental as like my drawing board for today or like my checkboard for today.
Right.
But when it but obviously to achieve that, that's when I start operating on things that are tangible, such as maybe using Google Calendar as a way to organize my workflow for today. Or let's say if I were to actually use Notion, which I actually do time to time, like I'll use Notion to create space structures that I send out to brands or people that I'm working with, right? So that's as far as though like I feel like I'm very limited on like my actual tangible tools, but my mental is where I actually do a lot more like my brainstorming and getting more of my ideas out compared to actually like writing them down. But I actually should be doing more of that now that you're bringing that up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I would approach that.
And that's fine. I mean, reading between the lines of what you said, what I get is, and this is what actually frustrates me a lot about social media. You brought up the prime example. There's a lot of big personalities and names that tell you Notion is the key to life. And this is how you use Notion to be super effective. But at the end of the day, and I say this literally every episode, I say this. The reason why I do what I do is there's going to be somebody that immigrated from the Philippines that is your age, that maybe even likes your hairstyle, right? Like some tiny little nuance, but since it's coming from you, it resonates and clicks. And they're like, oh my God, this principle of hard work over a long period of time finally works for me. And that's the beautiful thing we do about sharing content. And that same principle applies, or I think your methods of being successful. You just have to find out what works for you. And I think the unfortunate thing with content in this day and age is you're shoved these messages down your throat because they say this 100% will work. But it's really just someone saying this worked for me. It can work for you. But since they're trying to monetize it, the message turns in this worked for me. It'll 100% work for you because I need you to buy my audio book or read my blog. Right. Uh,
Yeah.
and so that in between the lines, that's what I heard. And it's okay. Sometimes I was told this back in this whole design. Have you heard of the design thinking mentality? It came out of Stanford. So
Yeah.
it's a very loose term, but it's about iterating ideas to make sure that the problems that you're solving is for the actual end user and not your gut intuition. You're going down the wrong path. Um,
Mm.
I went to one of these seminars and I've used this example, and it was kind of to what you're saying is like, you use Google Calendars, you're pretty basic. A lot of it is in your head. It's kind of what you're feeling. And we call this controlled chaos. Most creative people, if you look at their desk, there's just shit kind of sporadically around. But if
Facts.
you ask them, they would tell you exactly where their pen is at that moment in time because they understand that system. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah.
another way to explain what you said. So controlled chaos is a beautiful thing for people to
Controlled
adopt.
chaos. I like that. I like that.
Absolutely.
Because even the moment you said that, I looked at my desk and I was like, I do have a lot of shit laying around, but
No,
I do know where my pens are.
yeah, yeah, you know exactly where it is. Someone else would be like, "Dude, you're a disaster, boss." All right, so moving on. Amazing conversation already. We've tapped so many things. I know we're not doing the pure chronological order. What I want to do is this, because I feel like we have a lot to talk about content. I really want to get into the Web3 things.
Mhm.
Give me okay, but I don't want to skip over the DJ thing because I feel like there's a lot of lessons learned there. So take me through the DJ thing, and then take me through kind of your that or whatever you want to talk about there into the evolution at the beginning of Web3.
Yeah, yeah. So, I picked up DJing when I was like 13 and 14, and this was at the time where EDM, which is short for electric dance music, it was starting to become a really huge genre of music here in the States. And I remember, man, it was just like one of my goals one day just to be on like one of the bigger stages, like you would see at these festivals, and just do a 1 hour set and just make people go crazy. And so I've stuck with DJing throughout my entirety of my high school as well. And that's actually when I started DJing a lot of these house parties within my hometown. So like and because of that, I was able to start leveraging like what I like, I guess as a service, right? Like DJing like these parties to other high schools, right? So I would start going off to other cities, meet other high school kids like my age, DJ their house parties when we would have a good time, et cetera, et cetera. And I realized, I was like, wait a minute, this is something that people would consider as like a value, right? It's kind of what we were talking about earlier. This is value to people, like
Right.
being able to book a DJ that knows how to play the dope songs and knows how to mix this and mix that. Like that's value. But then again, it comes back to what I was saying earlier. How can I scale this? How can I market this to where other people can see me doing this type of stuff? And this is where I discovered and it's funny I say discover, but I've been on it for a while. This is when I actually got really active on Twitter for the first time, because I used to put so much time into Instagram, just posting here and there. But then I took a shift from Instagram and I was like, you know what? Let me record myself DJing like at my home in my room. Let me just record like a 1 minute, 2 minute mix, right? Upload this onto Twitter and let's see what happens, right?
Yeah.
And man, oh man, that was like the greatest decision I've ever done, because I remember off my first video, I like almost went viral on the timeline because it was something so refreshing and new to the Twitter timeline at the time that
Yes.
people can just listen to a 1 minute, 2 minute mix and just jam out for like in those 2 minutes and be like, yo, this guy is dope. Let me shoot him a follow. And because of this, not only did I start getting more bookings of house parties, but literally high schools started booking me for their proms. I started DJing like homecomings, like, and then it went from this to when I started when I turned 18, I started DJing clubs immediately in LA on like Thursday nights, Friday nights, just because this kid off social media started posting his mixes on the timeline. And so that gave me the biggest glimpse of like, okay, this is what marketing is. It's like it's about taking what you're good at, showing it in a way where it's entertainment and a value to people. And people are going to be like, yo, let's get this guy onto our club, onto our show, right? So to wrap it up though, COVID came in 2020. And this was a massive, massive hit to the music industry, because a lot of the ways that, you know, DJs, or, you know, like you were saying in my intro, I also took up being an audio engineer. A lot of these opportunities, these gigs, they closed down because of COVID, and it was just the natural, you know, result of how business operated. A lot of people couldn't see each other in person, you know. So that's what I took, that skill of marketing, came into Web3, and was like, okay, how can I do this all over again? But this time through content creation, through brand building, through space hosting. How can I show this to people? You know, so that's kind of like the
combine with the mindset into Web3 with the marketing, the music, or you were saying I'm going to apply what I learned to Web3? I
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it was exactly that. I'm gonna apply what I learned through like my music side, and how can I just translate everything that I've learned into Web3? You know, so that was like the approach that I had coming into the space.
Yeah, dude, I love that insight, and I have two questions to follow up on that. Is one, I'll also talk about this a lot. And I always love people's opinion. You like, listen, I'm not going to take away. You put the initiative. You said, hey, Twitter seems like an interesting platform for some short form music. I'm going to put that up there and see what happens. Like you said, it already went viral. how much do you attribute to timing? And talk to me about timing and the things that you're doing.
Dude, man, I feel this is something that I feel like I'm starting to learn as of recent. I feel that timing is so important. I mean, let's take a look at the timeline right now, right? Mikey is like,
Mm.
imagine launching an NFT project back in the bear market in 2022, right?
Right.
Your likelihood of success, even just to get 50% of your sales of your NFTs minted, was so minuscule, right?
Right.
Versus compared to now with this abstract mania and NFT mania on the timeline, just
Insane.
because the market is favoring the like NFTs at the moment, like now would be the greatest time to launch a project, right?
Yeah.
So I'm starting to learn stuff from crypto as well, where it's like, dang, there really is a time and place for things to go, and there is a time and place for things to not go,
Yeah.
right? So with that kind of mindset and the way that I understand marketing and what I learned in the music side of things, I was like, okay, there for me, it's like I had to understand, okay, Web3 is an emerging trend. Not a lot of people know about it, right? So how can I just dumb it down for people to understand? Which is where I really went hard on brand building, because everyone is familiar with brands, Nike, Adidas, you name it, right? But
Mm.
no one understands the intricacy and the details of what actually it takes to build these high
Right.
luxury, high quality brands, you
Right.
know? So this was my own little take, my own approach to how can I educate not just myself, but people that are alongside with me, trying to figure out what are some good projects to get into? How can I build my own project, right? Was by observing the Pudgy Penguins, the Zukis, the
Yeah.
Crypto Punks, the Bored Apes, seeing what they've done right with their brand and even
Yeah.
what they've done wrong, to then
Yeah.
now providing that type of insight to my audience to educate them on like, what does it take to build a polished brand in Web3, you
Right.
know? So
Right.
all of this, in a sense, like the timing of that 2021 cycle couldn't have been a better time to really get into this space, because that really showed you what is the first run of NFTs gonna look like. And it was so messy, man. Like, and you've been through this with me, right, Mikey? Is like from the moment that 21 cycle was done to where
Oh.
we are today, there was so much bullshit on the timeline, like
Mm.
during the bear market, like so many ugly things happening. But it led all of us, not just us two, but it led all of Web3 to where we are today, where we're finally seeing what I would like to coin it as like a matured and refined approach to
Yes.
NFTs, you
Yes.
know? So that's
Yeah.
why I think timing is so crucial nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah. It is all great points, and it's really interesting to me. I would say like over the last 6 to 8 months, the quality of founder that comes on the show.
Mm,
Like, listen, I had to start somewhere just like you too. I had no offense to 19 or 20-year-old people, but it was pretty evident they were just trying to create something to take care, to catch on the
yeah.
hype.
Yeah.
But my my the way to justify what I was doing was I at least was having a heartfelt conversation with them, and I was never like, "You need to go buy this project and waste your money." I had a couple guests on, and I was like,
Yeah.
this is absolutely going nowhere." But you're still having a conversation. You make your own judgment, and you watch my conversation, you'd be pretty clear that you probably shouldn't spend your money. But I think the timing aspect for both of us is true, because not only, like I said in the beginning, timing was great for us in the sense that we got exposure, but now this time we have experience, and that's what's totally different. So
Mm,
I have another question for you. I'm interested in this marketing your content, because I actually think that's another, you asked me, um, what are the things that you think about improving upon your business and whatnot? This is one of the things I lack in the most, and this is another reason my content is different, in the sense that minimum I'm having an hour and a half conversation.
mhm.
I've had 4-hour conversations. That is
Wow.
very, for a very small. Jr. and I talked for 3 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, this man talked about taking his own life. I mean, we got deep, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is what I love to do, right? But not necessarily what my audience wants to listen to.
Right. Right.
real shit job, and I'm trying to get better at it, to cut those micro moments that are very interesting to share with the audience because people just want to watch 60 seconds, which really pisses me off. Dude, I remember back in 2008 when I was working for Geico, and the media companies came to me and they're like, "Hey, we got a brand new idea, 6-second ads." I'm thinking, like, who the hell is ever going to want a 6-second ad? That's all everybody
Yeah, yeah.
and it's gotten down to like 2 seconds. Like, literally got like a minuscule amount of time to catch somebody's attention. So me screaming "What up, folks?" in the beginning every time is not going to catch. People are going to get bored with that. So I have to take these micro moments. I'm really shit at that. So that being said, I'm interested in the insights you gain because you recognize this trend and you were doing it with your DJ and music career, and obviously has followed into the Web3. Talk to me about that marketing strategy and lessons learned.
I love this, man. And I think the reason why I think personal brands are so important nowadays is like you need to have, it's almost like this, right? It's like, and for example, like I love JR, and the reason why I love JR is because that man is so honest and he is so genuine with his takes. But like, let's highlight that, right? Let's hone on this. Like, it's the people and their story that makes them so remarkable and makes them so favorable. It's not about like what they achieve or what they do, because marketing is not about what you're going to sell, right? It's about how you sell it. Like, and this is why, again, the people that have the most interesting stories to tell about themselves or how they were raised or what their upbringing is, like, you remember more about them more maybe than like how many millions of dollars they made in their lifetime, right? So like, for me, it's this combination of how personalized can you be with your audience, right? Like, can people on your spaces or your streams say in the chat that, hey, like, I know Mikey's favorite coffee is X, or like, hey, I know Mikey's favorite color is whatever,
I
you
like that.
know? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is that deep level connection that I feel you can't rush this too, by the way. Like, this what I'm talking about, like, this is something that comes over time and is established over time, is like, as you continue to make healthy relationships and newer friendships in this space, and you start to tell people more about your personal life and less Web3 crypto tech talk, right? People appreciate that, because
Yeah.
in this environment we're so used to this fast-paced alpha. What's the next mint? What's the next ticker? What's the next 100x? Like, that's cool and all, don't get me wrong, but what makes people memorable is their story, their
Yeah.
upbringing. How did they get where they are today? So that's why I think this combination of marketing and personal brand and getting to know someone on a deeper level, this is how you really become memorable in this space. And it's not to be such an explosive like hype marketing that you see from traditional projects, but this is something that just gets built over time, and you can't rush your social credit, right? And that's something that I like how to coin it, is like, you have your own social credit score, and depending on how people view you, how people interact with you, right? We all have our own different social credit scores, and depending on how low that is or how high that is, right, it gives you a perception of how you're received to the general public, you
Yeah.
know? So that's why, to me, like, when it comes to social media and the way that we present ourselves, stay true to yourself, and naturally, right? I'm sure you've heard this before, Mikey, is the law of attraction, right?
Yeah.
You just let things come to you, and I think this is exactly where a lot of people lack in, is they always try to force things. They always want to force that. They try to force that opportunity. They want that position so bad, they're willing to do anything to achieve it. But what if the whole time the world, right, or God, if you believe in him, right, God was like, hey, you know what, this was never meant for you, right?
Yeah.
And if anything, this was a stepping stone to help you get where you actually want to be,
100.
right? So that's how I kind of view, and I know I'm getting so deep with like my words, but all in all, like, marketing and just the way that I see how Web3 operates, right, is it comes down to the person alone. How well, what's the resonating factor that makes you want to connect with this person, you
Dude,
know? So That's my take on that. Yeah.
Giving me chills, my man. And and I love that you bring this up for this reason. One of the most effective things that I've tweaked with my pitch in the last 6 to 7, and this is another thing, and you probably can, before I get to my points, I don't know, it just popped in my head, and you'll probably agree with this. People, I've spent thousands of hours on the phone to get it a little over 200 founders on my podcast. Think about that, people. Thousands. I have so many calls a week while having a full-time job and a 16-month-old kid. So if I can do it, you can do it. But that's the version of like grind and work. And if I look back over my 4-year Web3 content creator career, it is by far the most valuable thing that I have done. Not a Discord chat. I say, I need to do a 30-minute intro call with you to get to know who you are as a human being, and I'll tell you who I am as a human being. And it's so incredibly valuable. So that touches on what you just said. And then to layer on top of that, the thing that I've tweaked with my pitch that has been insanely effective, founders so resonate with this. I say, listen, 75% of my content is about you. I'll give you your 25% of Web3, but BAWSA in his spaces will take care of that along with the 400 other spaces that you're going to be on. But this does things twofold. It creates obviously more different content for you to talk about your project. But the two most important things that it does is, one, it helps you start building your personal brand for the first time ever. I'm going to give you really interesting content to build your personal brand. And then two, because we build that personal brand, it's going to allow you to connect with your community and your audience like never before. It trumps being in a Discord and saying
Facts.
these things. And when you get and peel back this layer, and that alone, man, it's just amazing to see the response. Like, it's almost like I don't even have to finish the sentence. Or like, yeah, sign me up. When are we doing this? You know? And it just goes to your point. Like, this stuff is very, very important. Thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And again, I love how you're peeling the onion here, right? Like I always tell newer founders that are extremely new to this space that people connect with people. People are not going to connect right away with your NFT or what you're selling, whatever it is that you're trying to sell to them. They're not going to connect right away to that. They're going to connect with who are you as a
Yep.
person, which is why like I actually advocate for founders or people in general on the timeline to actually start sharing more like of their, honest stories or something that they went through as a kid. And the reason why is because there might be that one follower that comes across your content and be like, hey, you know what? I actually went through something similar, like
Yes.
what this guy went through.
Yeah.
Now, that is the best way to hook someone into your brand because now you're tapping it into them emotionally, right? So once that emotional connection established, man, like everything that comes afterwards, it's like it's free value to them because you've already secured them as a big fan of who you are as a person. So that's why I look at marketing more as an emotional tool more than it is of what it is like how I guess businesses perceive it as like, oh, we have to create the strategy, we have to do that. Like, yeah, strategy and all those brainstorming things are very important, but where does the emotional connection seep in, and how are you able to loop that into the strategy that you're building?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Love it, man. And it's, you know what it's the difference is, it's like my traditional marketing background, that is a transaction. At the end of the
Mm,
day, you're trying to get a consumer convert to buy your product. What's cool about Web3 is it gives content creators really a great ecosystem to do what we're doing right now, but it is monetizable and a valuable thing,
mhm,
which is
mhm,
super cool. But and I'm glad that you bring this up because I think the number one mistake that I see from creators in the space is they just write threads because they know they can monetize it. And listen, there are great thread people out there, but it's very hard to differentiate yourself on a thread. People are just
mm,
regurgitating the same
mhm,
shit, right?
mhm.
So you really need to figure out if that's fine. If you're a great writer and you want to be a thread person, you better damn sure figure out how to differentiate yourself. Because and I see it happening, like we said before, this next 6 to 8 months founders, well, they already are. They've caught on to the bullshit that I'll give you. I have 100,000 followers, and I'll give, dude, in 2021, I knew creators that were charging 3 ETH for a post,
Woo.
you know, and people were paying this shit, and it's like
Yeah.
it's crazy. So we have real entrepreneurs in this space, and the stuff that we're talking about is what's going to attract you to them and help you gain business. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Man, incredible conversation so far. Let's get into Web3, man. TLDR. This is my boomer self. I always have to like say it out in my mind before I turn them up. Too long didn't read TLDR of the intro to Web3. And then as you give that to me, we're gonna continue to go deep into content. I can't wait to hear this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, this is like one of my favorite stories I love telling because it loops in back to my whole music journey of being an engineer. So I live here in LA, and LA is just one of the biggest like go-to cities for people that want to pursue like a music career and whatnot, just because of the environment itself. There are so many studios out here, right? And so I remember my first year of recording artists, and I've known these guys pretty much till this day, and they're like really close friends of mine. But one of the artists at the time that I was recording when I first met him, he used to own, I believe, like 2 to 3 Bored Apes, and this was back when Bored Apes was like only $2,000, like around that 5K range. So this was really, really early to that NFT bull run that we saw in 21, right? And so I remember sitting in the chair one day in the studio, and he was like he pulled up his phone right next to me, and he was like, yo, look at this. And it was like a picture of a Bored Ape at the time, but I didn't know what the hell it was. And then I asked, I was like, what is this? And he was like, oh, it's called an NFT. And I was like, what's an NFT? And then I'll never forget this response. He was like, I have no idea, but I can sell this right now for $10,000. And I was like, what the, like, this sounds like a scam. Like, this sounds like a straight up scam. Like, yeah. So I was like, dude, what the, but of course, me being my curious self, I was like, I want to know more. What is this NFT? What is this stuff? And so I remember going home that same night and downloading MetaMask, because that's what he told me he was using to like find all these NFTs. And then that's when I discovered OpenSea and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what kind of was like my soft intro into this space. And I will never forget though, my first NFT was called like Space Monkey Apes. And immediately I got rugged. I immediately got like liquidated off my first wallet, and I was like, well, everyone has to go through this, right? So yeah, man, that was like my soft intro into Web3. It was through that.
That's amazing. So all right, so you got the soft intro. I have a random story. I won like a Cool Cat creative competition, and
woo,
but it was like a derivative, and it was like, but at the time it was like 20 grand, right? And
yeah.
NFT was, I think it's like 0.03 ETH now, but I'm not selling that. It's the first NFT I ever won.
Yeah.
So tell me, so I think a lot of the stories of a lot of us is like, okay, you're like, one, this has got to be a scam. Two, there's shit tons of money to be made. So now you're starting to go down the rabbit hole. Start taking me through that journey. I'm really interested in this journey of from then to BAWSA today, because I think it's taking a lot of twists and turns.
Dude, so I would say like immediately a couple weeks after that first incident of like, you know, being liquidated for the first time, that's when I first discovered this thing called whitelist spots. And I was like, okay, so you need these things called whitelist spots in order to guarantee yourself a mint. And of course, this was back when I don't know if you remember this project. It was called Tasty Bones. This was
I remember Tasty Bones.
Yeah, Tasty Bones. So yeah. They slow rugged the project, but anyways, it was a time where Doodles was launching, and just like with every big legacy project, there was like that era of derivatives that would come afterwards, right? And Tasty Bones was one of them. And I remember at the time, you remember when in order to join a Discord, you had to have notifications on the Twitter, because they would randomly tweet these codes in order to access the Discord. So I literally remember camping on my phone on the couch, just refreshing the hell out of the Tasty Bones page because they were tweeting in 30 minutes a new invite code is about to go out, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And I remember the moment it was tweeted, I remember trying to be so fast, blah, 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 typing, and I got in. And I was so stoked. I was so happy because I was like, oh my gosh, this is the first time I got in to a project. Let's go.
Yeah.
And man, this is something I'll never forget too. Within like the first hour of joining that Discord, I immediately got the whitelist role. And I remember because the moderator who was conducting the Discord at the time, he was like, yeah, I just really appreciate your positivity and your vibes that you bring. Like, you seem very outgoing, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to give you the whitelist role. And so that interaction alone was like, okay, there seems to be this community building process that happens within these Discords. And I was like, you know what? Like, although I'm not a moderator for this Discord, I want to just actually be that person that just welcomes people into the community because I just love the vibes in here. I love the people in here. I love the way that we're all just kind of helping each other. And so I literally did that. And this was when, some more context, I think I caught COVID that same week. So I was literally locked in the house and I couldn't go anywhere. I was just stuck to my laptop, like couldn't do anything. So in a sense, catchy COVID was a blessing because it forced me to literally stay locked into this Discord. So I spent those 2 to 3 weeks just staying in there, siloed in, just being like the community person. I would host VC workshops. I would like talk to the team like, hey guys, let's do this, let's do that. And eventually the team was like, I remember the founder at the time, he pulled me aside to like a separate chat and was like, hey BAWSA, the team and I have been discussing this and we would actually like to onboard you as a Discord moderator for the project. And I will never forget, still the same sensations that are running through me right now, like hearing that and just feeling like I achieved such a high level of like, oh my God, like this is peak Web3, like Discord moderator. Let's go. Like, let's go. I'm down. So, and on top of this, right, I remember the benefits that they told me was we're going to pay you like $500 or something on top of receiving 2 whitelist spots. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is fucking amazing, right? And I was like, let me keep doing this. Let me just keep doing this and this. And so that process alone, that experience in Tasty Bones showed me everything about how to get ahead of the game in Web3. And right, and it's happening right now, Mikey, in the timeline is like, people are in these Discords grinding. These are guys grinding every day, sending in as much messages, attending as much spaces, doing this art contest, signing up for this creator academy, etc., you know, just to secure a whitelist spot. But then I was like, you know what? The way to get it the easiest is just to become a Discord moderator for the project. Right. And so I remember, man, I love the 21 cycle so much because there was so much ambition and hunger on the timeline that I remember applying to so many projects during that time. And like literally, I'm sure I applied for some rug projects too, because I was just so focused on like, yo, let me just get the whitelist spot. Like, I just want the whitelist spot, you know? So like, I would literally just become a Discord moderator for so many projects. But little did I know that I was actually building up my portfolio. Yes. I was actually building up a portfolio for the future, because now I can show to these actual legitimate projects that are serious to be like, hey, this is my portfolio. This is what I worked on. This is what I did. And you know, when I applied for the project, that actually increased the likelihood of me being accepted as to be a part of the team, you know? So I'll pause there because there's so much like things I said right now, but dude, that experience alone of just being a Discord moderator for like, I would say a solid year has taught me so much about like how to network, how to interact, how to build communities. Like, it was so fun, man. So I'll never forget that. I think that was like 2022 going to 2023. But like, I'll never forget that experience because that showed me everything about what it takes to really grind in this space, and like the willingness to go as far as you can to achieve such whitelist spot or whatever, you know? So yeah.
Dude, I have such similar experiences, right? Like, I started because my original thesis in this, I'm a brand marketing guy, and I was like, this will fundamentally change the way brands build. if they want to build the right way. Like, yeah, corporations are still probably not going to get real intimate like Web3, but you can build a pretty big company, as we've seen, like Bored Ape and Azuki, based off of this concept. Because I hate corporate marketing. I hated it. But I was like,
Right.
that was what resonated with me. I suck at investing. I'll never be good. I'm just not even interested in it, right? I've
Yeah,
made
yeah.
a lot of money, but I've also lost a lot of money.
Right, right.
What I was doing. And this time around, fortunately, I will know what to do, but the same thing. So I started, um, and I think like, oh, how do you want to be a moderator? How do you want to build our community? This space really is dependent on good vibes, right? Like you have to be able to, and I think you have it, and I think it's something that naturally comes to me, but I'm able to somehow convey genuinity through a keyboard and a screen. And that's
Mhm,
actually a skill
mhm.
set in itself too, right? It's the cadence of how you interact, the words that you use, who you pay attention to when you're chatting to. It's almost like you're real time vetting people that you think are actually legitimate or are not even worth your time and building the right connections and relationships. And that's something that goes over repetition and time too. But I did that through multiple rugs, started, same thing. Like there was this project called Space Cubes that was a total rug. But the guy actually meant well. Like and this was and I came at it from a little different perspective, right? I had a very successful corporate career. I was dealing with a lot of people in their early 20s. I'm in my late 30s at the time.
Mhm.
And so I am feeling pretty confident, like I can at least deliver some value because I have experience. Uh, and I went on the call with this guy, and we were talking like multiple ETH to manage the community, percentages of profits. And I'm like, holy shit, this is crazy. He ended up going crazy because he hedged all of his bets on building this project and stopped working on his creative agency and lost all of his money because there's a lot of things that happened. But the point is, putting yourself out there, repetition, you learn the skill. And then the hate beast story for me, like that was kind of my first big break in the space. I was one of
Wow.
15 mods in the hate beast server, and there's a million people in that Discord server at the end, probably 300,000 bots, but there was a good 500,000 people in that server, if not more.
Right, right.
And I was the Mikey. I still go into Discords that I went into the BAWSA Discord and I had at least 6 comments. Holy shit. It's Mikey. Right? Like, I still exist, yeah, and I'm like, "Yeah,
Let's go.
I haven't left, I haven't gone anywhere." But yeah, I got that job was, again, at this time, you knew how it worked. You would go into a Discord, and this was the day and age where founders still did not shut their DMs down because they did not
Mm.
realize the shit show that was about to ensue.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
I would get into a super hyped Discord, and I would immediately go to the top right person, which was the founder, and I would DM them immediately and say, "Hey, I'm Mikey G. I have a 10 plus year career in marketing. You can trust me. I'm in a good time zone in California, like modded X, Y, and Z." And I did that. And you want to talk about luck and timing. And if people tell you it's not, then they're BSing you. Like, imagine Digimental 15 minutes into that server opening up, it was pure fucking mayhem. And I DM this guy who still has his DM opens, and immediately he types back to me, "Hey, you live in California? We need one more mod that's in that time zone. Here's your HAPE profile PFP. You're a mod." And that was it.
Let's go.
Right? And then like 3 days later, they're having official mod applications. There's like 20,000 people that are applying. Right? And so you wanna talk about the same situation, and I just love I love the message that is just there is an element to grinding. You gotta kinda love what you do, but you also, as you go through that, just meet people, connections, and build those relationships. So,
Yeah.
absolutely huge. I know we're going pretty hard, man. I mean, we're already, believe it or not, talking for an hour and 15 minutes. I could go
Wow.
for 4 hours. But that's what we do here because it's just so much fun to talk and we get a little deeper. What I want to do is, and what I'm really interested in to kind of get to present day, and then we can talk a little bit about the future. And I'm hoping we have many more podcasts after this because this is
Yeah, yeah.
natural feeling. So I want to do this. I want to get to kind of bring me around to present day. We went through Tasty. By the way, I looked up Tasty Bones right now, and still on OpenSea, one of the top 5 was sold for 19 ETH.
Oh my gosh.
Somebody spent $80,000 on this thing.
Oh my goodness.
Wild. It's worth 0.006 ETH right now. I think $20. But that's the time that we went through too. So, but take me to current BAWSA. But what I'm interested in this is your journey, because you've built a household space name, and there's so many people trying to do that. So again, I think it's a little part of timing, but you absolutely built strategy into that, and you had a process to. Your name is now synonymous with spaces. So how did you get there, and what did that journey look like?
Yeah. Dude, spaces came to me at such a random time. I think I started doing even way before Brick by Brick came in. I was already doing spaces just as a speaker for probably like 6 to 8 months. And then I started to realize, I was like, wait, there's a different type of way of connecting with people on spaces, right? Because, and why I love spaces so much is that you get their most rawest take, and you can't get that through a text message, right? You can't get that through a DM because you can't really gauge behavior through a DM. But what you can gauge it through is something like this, like a podcast, where even it helps even more when there's cameras on, right? Yeah. But the fact that spaces are, no cameras, but there are microphones, right? It allows that communication process to be very instant, to be very raw, honest, organic, So that, again, tying to my whole what I believe in with how people resonate with people first, right? I was like, you know what? I want to create my own show one day, but it wasn't for the sake of like, oh, I want to be known as like the most biggest Web3 show, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I really wanted to do it because I realized there was a lack of communication, raw, honest communication in Web3. And most of the time, people spend probably 80% of their day on Twitter, or again, maybe it's just me, right? But like that social audio, right? That audio platform like Spaces has really opened up my mind to the way of how us individuals, us humans, we connect over the timeline. And the name Brick by Brick actually just came from a very simple mission, and it's actually just the way that how I describe life. And I think we just lost Mikey. If I'm not mistaken, I think Mikey might have just left the stage right now, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just check. Baby. Oh, there he is. There he is. No, you're good.
Brick, and then it cut off. I'm back.
No, you're good. Good. Yeah. So the name Brick by Brick came from a very simple mission. It was just like, I believe literally the phrase brick by brick is a visual representation of how I like look at life. And especially for those that are entrepreneurs, people that really want to pursue the thing that they want to do, whether that's opening their own business, starting your own creator journey, whatever it may be. I look at life as we're laying down one brick a day, every single day, towards what we're trying to build, And I love this. And I wish I can pull it up here, but there's this graphic representation. And it's funny because I think Frank DeGods actually posted it. It was like 2 years ago now, but he posted this graphic, and it's like 3 separate phases. Phase 1 is like this stick figure just laying down one brick, right? And he's not so fascinated. But then in the second phase, he's like, there's a good amount of bricks, and he's standing on top of it, and the caption is like, oh, this is actually pretty cool, this might go to somewhere. And then phase 3 is when there's so many bricks, he is so high up in the sky that he looks down and he's like, wow, I've came so far, right? And like that's exactly how I look at this journey of life, is like, time is fleeting, and like time is passing by so fast that we don't really get to appreciate. And even right now, like appreciate the present moment of how far we've come. And this can be in anything that you pursue. But here's the thing, right? Not a lot of people have laid down their first brick. Because sometimes maybe fear or anxiety or a lack of confidence may hold them back, right? But that's why I coined that show, or my own spaces, called Brick by Brick, because not only is it revolved around Web3, right, but it's also revolved around life in general, right? And
Yeah.
and if you ever tune into a brick by brick space before, sometimes the conversation would suddenly jump from NFT brands and how you're supposed to build them to how a founder is supposed to talk about their life, and all of a sudden we're talking about life stuff, like we're talking about like
Yeah.
how to succeed or etc. So I really am grateful for the platform that I've built, because not only do I open a conversation for founders and projects to spotlight themselves, but we really get down to more of that personal kind of conversation where you don't really hear about stuff, specifically conversations about people opening up or people being super, vulnerable on a space, talking about what they've gone through. And I
Yeah.
feel like a platform like Brick by Brick has been able to let them express those type of thoughts and whatnot. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's what's kind of led me to where I am today with Brick by Brick. Yeah.
Sounds really familiar. Some of other shit people are doing. So here's my question then. How do you think, because there are other people out there that have spaces that are trying to achieve what you're achieving. How do you think you became so popular? How do you think you got the viewership that you got? Because I think people are really dumbfounded by how to acquire this, right? I think what I'm getting at is there are a lot of creators out there that make good content, and every day they wake up, they put something out, they get 2 views, they get no comments, and it's just frustrating as hell. How do you think you navigated that journey to get the attention that because you get top, like you were saying, we both get top tier people in the space on our show. So that came from something.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, the answer goes back to what we were saying earlier, right?
Mhm.
It's like a combination of timing,
Yeah,
because when Brick by Brick was launched, it was during the dead bear. So meaning that this was already being built when nobody was around in this space, right? And actually a lot of people who did attend Brick by Brick during the bear. I know I lost you for a second there, Mike. I'll just retrack for a
no, I
little
hear
bit.
you. I heard
Okay.
you the whole time. For some odd reason, my camera keeps on
No,
going
you're
in.
good. You're good. Yeah, like so I launched it during the bear where no one was really interested in Web3. But I'll never forget, man, my first show, I think I reached like 100 concurrent listeners live.
Wow.
And like that already was like such a huge monumental moment for me, because I was like, damn, I wasn't even expecting this much people to show up to my first space, but they
Right.
did.
Yeah.
Right. And so that alone too already shows me like how many true genuine friendships have I established already
That's what
prior,
I was about to ask because
you know?
that's not
Exactly.
normal, right? So you think that came from the years of grinding in the Discord servers and building
Correct.
your brand in the trenches, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Every single phone call that I've had on Zoom, Google Meets,
yeah,
whatever, on the phone, FaceTime, whatever, all of those calls that I've had prior to my first space was
right,
the reason why I think I had 100 people show up off the bat, you
right,
know? So
right.
to keep it short, it's literally just a combination of timing and consistency, man. I like remember telling myself every single Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern is going to be the Brick by Brick show. And
Mhm.
it has been every single time so far. And I think I've only missed probably like 4 or 5 weeks out of the past 2 years now since I've had the show go up.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like that has really led me to be known as like BAWSA and Spaces, Brick by Brick and BAWSA, you
yeah,
know? So
yeah.
yeah, it's a culmination of all those three things. Yeah.
I love it, man. Amazing insight. People need to hear that too. And I would still put the top of the thing is what I'm hearing is what we talked about in the beginning too. Consistency over a long period of time. For some
Yeah.
odd reason, the human brain still just thinks like, oh, my content is better and I'm gonna get thousands of followers within the first 6 months. And I was like, yeah, you can if you hack the system and buy bots and do shitty things. But that's the other thing that's beautiful about seeing all this stuff unfold is people are catching on from a consumer perspective too to say it's
Mhm.
pretty easy to find an account that's botted at this moment in time,
Facts.
right?
Facts.
And so people were naive to that back in 2021, but they aren't so much now. I love the insights. We've had such a robust conversation. What I'm interested in next, I actually have one more question. It's a softball. Don't start shaking. Don't get nervous. But before that, whatever time frame you think is appropriate, 3 months, 6 months, a year, what does the future look like for you? What are you working on? What are the things that you're thinking about and concentrating on?
Yeah, man. It's funny because shout out to Kermit. And honestly, shout out to my whole Fungible team, man. Those guys are like my backbone to when it comes to support. But it's funny because Kermit and I had this little catch up call the first week of January, and this is something that he asked me. Um, and it's funny because every time people ask me this question, I feel like my answers change.
Yeah.
But I feel like for the first time, I'm like, you know what? I've actually feel like I found something that I'm going to stick to. And the answer to this question is I really want to focus on expanding the BAWSA brand onto other social platforms,
Yeah.
because something that I'm actually really interested in and I've discovered about myself recently is I love storytelling, but not your traditional like once upon a time, blah, blah, blah. But it's more so of like honing in on people's lives and trying to paint them a picture of how they can depict what they went through and how they were raised, or kind of like we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
But convey this through content.
Yeah.
And I really want to use my life and my story as like my hamster, like my first, test at this. And I want to expand content on YouTube, on Instagram, do more of like a cinematic approach to content where I really focus on the shots, I focus on the dialogue, I focus on the transition of a certain scene or etc. You know, so I really want to expand the BAWSA brand in that sense. And then in the perspective of Web3, I really want to continue to scale brick by brick, in the sense of trying to expand my connections and who I have reached to in the space, because I realized in the past 2 years of doing brick by brick, I featured a lot of just strictly NFT projects. And that's
Yeah.
fine because I think that's where a lot of the alpha is gained. But like, and this is some alpha I'll share on today's on podcast. I'm actually getting in touch with a lot of new Barachain founders and just Barachain teams where I feel like if I can execute this well, this will also open up doors for me to get people from Monad or from people from Eclipse, like a lot of these newer chains that are popping up, because
Yeah.
that's how I want to expand the Brick by Brick show, is to get these newer faces on, to expand my reach, to expand the brand, to make sure people know that Brick by Brick, is one of like, the top NFT spaces
Yeah.
that you can tune
Yeah.
into, so yeah, man, I think those are my two things that I'm really gonna focus on this year. And something that I've learned too is like the lesser you can focus on is actually you yield better results, because sometimes compiling too much on your plate is gonna throw you off. And so I'm just gonna focus on just those two things: is expanding the BAWSA brand and focusing on brick by brick through connections. Yeah.
I love it, and you're literally speaking to my heart. I'm just constantly doing the same things, and I found some people in the background that are really good researchers, and like
Yeah.
I just don't have time to scour. Like I have my list of people, you obviously being on it, that I'll like, okay, if these people are tweeting something, it must be important. And then I have like a layered on kind of research, and like I said, my buddy Bubble. Um, and interested in, because you have to pay attention to trends as a content creator
Oh
too.
yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
you stay true to yourself, but like I saw the AI thing coming. I've had many AI founders on my show already, and that shit is fascinating. That's opened up new doors that I never even thought were possible. And how just the topic of how to integrate AI to make your content creation journey more efficient. It's going to be incredibly helpful over the next 12 months if people understand how to build an agent and use it for their personal business. It's going to change the game. And you're going to see some content creators, and you're going to be like, how the fuck are these people doing it? It's because
Yeah.
they're effectively using AI. So I love that. I love the insight. This has been a fantastic conversation. Hour and a half. Like I said, we could go for multiple hours. Beautiful. And this is the question I asked every guest, and I want your heartfelt, serious answer.
Mhm.
You just went through the Mikey G podcast experience. Midlife Crisis is the name of the company. You've hosted thousands of spaces. You've talked to thousands of people. I want your genuine, raw, authentic feedback about how you think today went compared to what you usually do in the Web3 space?
Dude, first of all, can I just say again, it's an honor to be on your show. And
And
like I said, like I think specifically Web3 podcasts are going to be such a huge thing in the coming years because again, I think I saw this metric too that podcasts are starting to become like they're starting to match the listening rate to actual music, you know, because people listen to music on Spotify and that's strictly it. But podcasts on another end is a whole entire different metric that you have to measure based on listening time, right? And I think this is slowly catching up to like the general audience where music is currently sitting at. And you combine this with AI and crypto and blockchain and all these things, like this is such a perfect blend of all these things happening all at once. And so I just want to say to you, man, thank you for having me. And
sure.
seriously, I cannot wait for more episodes that I can be featured on, and hopefully that can happen sometime soon. But seriously, genuinely from today, I really enjoyed the way this kind of and the way you framed it as well. Like, we talked about like my upbringing first. We talked about me, like how I came into this space, and they really started talking more about the present, right? And then now we're kind of talking about the future, you know. So in terms of like storyboard wise, this show was curated really well, you
Thanks.
know. um I think the only thing I would like maybe in the future to see of is like maybe just like in between like conversations there's like fun little games or just like a 1 minute like fun incentive that both you and I can participate in, right? Or maybe like I don't
Ooh,
know,
talk to me
we
more
do,
about that.
you know, like, or I
Like,
don't
give
know,
me
let
an example.
so on top of my head, don't take me seriously on this.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's say like I don't know, you got like an abstract gaming project to sponsor
yeah.
this stream. Let's say that between after the first topic, second topic, in between those three topics, like we played one game each. And let's say it's like a I don't know, like a fun survival game where you have to survive, I don't know, in 30 seconds or a minute. Like something where we can like showcase the audience that like, hey, like shout out to our sponsor X, right? We're now gonna play at least one game each and let's see out of the two of us who can survive the longest, right? And then let's, you know, just to kind of add more of like that entertainment layer, right? And
Mm.
maybe like I don't know, by I don't know, StreamYard allows it where all of a sudden there's a new like a new layout on the stream where people can
Oh,
see
yeah.
our screens, like we're actually playing the game on our phone,
Totally could do
whatever
that.
it may be, you know. So just a little bit more of like I guess that fun entertainment layer to it, as the only thing I would say is like what I would love to see in the show. But
Never gotten that feedback, and I love it. We're gonna have to
yeah,
talk more about that because that's
yeah,
an experiment. I freaking love it, man. I freaking love it. And we got some comment of just we both need to just keep on going. That's as simple
yeah,
as that. So,
yeah, yeah,
dude,
yeah.
my closing comments, and then we'll call it a day. I think your superpower is close to mine, which is or might be just exact similar. There's no way you can't get the genuinity from how you're speaking. You know, you you care deeply about people, um, and you were really really honest, and you gave us some insights about your childhood, but you also gave us, and I like this about this podcast in particular. And this is what I want to talk to you after, just a couple minutes after we
Yeah,
stop.
yeah.
We can have a just like a wrap up. Um, we gave a lot of tangible, I think, like actionable insight. And there's so much fluff in this space. And I think it's value, and I think you understand the value of that, and you've started to do that. So I'm excited to see you continue that journey, but I also want to see how we can help collaborate together to bring value, because I think that's what the space lacks a little bit,
Mm,
in a sense, especially from our content creators. Like, we've seen people effectively use cohorts of content creators to produce marketing campaigns.
correct.
What we haven't seen is cohorts of creators to really lift each other up in an effective way. People have tried it. I don't think it's been effective. So how do you crack that? Not because I think that's important, and just the tangible takeaways from this conversation is the amount of shorts that we'll be able to make out of this that are going to make an impact that we can put up on our socials. Is going to be insane.
Yeah, yeah.
And then at the end of the day, man, I say this for everybody. You just gave me an hour and a half of your time. All of our time is insanely valuable. So I deeply, I'm this extreme gratitude for that. Um, and we just got a deeper friendship, and I just cannot wait to continue to learn and grow, watch you grow, watch myself grow, but do it alongside. You're in LA, I'm in Northern San Diego. We are definitely gonna hug it out.
Oh yeah.
Beer together, a Diet Coke, sing karaoke, whatever you like to do, I don't care.
I love it.
And you're not in the North LA. You're okay in LA. Are you in a bad area?
Oh no, I'm actually like decently far from where all those
Okay,
fires are.
cool.
So yeah,
Good,
I'm
good.
actually in a really good spot. But yeah,
Sweet.
grateful and thankfully, yeah, yeah.
Same here too. Although there's a fire that started in Miramar that's not too far
Oh
away.
my
We'll
gosh.
start talking about.
Yeah,
We'll be all right. We'll be all right. I'm not gonna
yeah.
worry about it. But yes, from the bottom of my heart, deep gratitude, so much love for your brother, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, dude, and same goes to you, Mikey, seriously. And like what would be really cool is like I don't know if you're already doing it, but like a recap post from today's stream,
Oh, yeah,
just like
oh, that goes up, brother.
it
Don't
goes up. Yeah, 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 yeah. I remember seeing one with JR. I was like, I
yeah,
love this. Yeah,
don't
yeah.
you worry about it. We'll get recaps up. We'll talk all about that. Shorts coming, all the things, brother. Um,
Amazing, amazing.
and with that being said, people, Mikey G and BAWSA finally met up. We crushed it. We gave you some content alpha. We vibed out, had a good time. And guess what, people? This is just the beginning. Thank you all for your time. Mikey G and BAWSA are out.
Thank you guys.